So everyone, welcome to Jigar Shah. Jigar, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate it. And to the audience out there, welcome to EE Global. Want to take a quick moment to thank all of our sponsors who make events like this possible and invite you all to join several of our sponsors, NIPA, Metris, and Guidehouse in the lunch lounge later on today. But we're going to start with an Ask Me Anything with someone whose reputation precedes him, Mr. Jigar Shah, who currently serves as a director of the Loan Program Office at DOE. And Jigar, I will tell you, I is one of these people who had a long-range girl crush on you. I describe you as the clean energy guru. When people ask me, who is this person? I was like, oh, that's the person, clean energy guru. So we're really pleased to have you. But this is an opportunity for us to ask you anything. And so we're going to do just that. And I appreciate you being open to whatever comes at us.
Of course. Well, and the feeling is mutual. I was so just excited and elated when you took over at the Alliance to Save Energy, and just it's an amazing time to be in clean energy and decarbonization.
Absolutely. So let's start with that. Clean energy and decarbonization. We know that we have spent a lot of time thinking and talking about what a just transition looks like. How do we ensure that all communities are involved, engaged, and benefiting from all this great work that we're doing? And I've often said that there is something that we can all do as part of this work. And so I'm going to start with my first question, which is to you. As you look at your role at the loan program office, kind of how do you see that role and how it can push forward a climate agenda, a clean energy agenda, and then what role do you think energy efficiency can play?
It's a good question, and I don't quite know where to start the answer, so let me just start someplace and then I'll ramble a little bit. But I think we're really a public policy bank, right? And as a bank, you can have all sorts of dreams as a bank, but at the end of the day, you live to serve borrowers, right? So someone actually has to want to work with you and apply for a loan, right? And so that's what we're really trying to figure out. So when I took the job, it was very clear that the president and the secretary and many others, right? Including myself, were very committed to equity and some of these other issues. And and it's obvious that the Loan Programs Office has not participated in these issues, right? We do billion-dollar solar farms or billion-dollar wind farms or geothermal facilities or, Ford Motor Company and Tesla's, manufacturing facilities, right? And so we started a listening tour, and we've talked to over 40 entities now, from residential solar installers to municipalities and municipal utilities to others, around where they thought we might have the most impact. And as you know, in many of these areas, there's a tendency of government to tell people what they need. And that is certainly not my point of view. I think people should tell us what they need, and we should be responsive to their needs. So there's a couple things that we've heard so far. One is that the customer acquisition cost of working with low moderate income communities is very high. It costs more to serve these communities to gain their trust than it does with other communities. And so that's one thing that we've heard. The second thing we've heard is that that fintech companies in general have really targeted these communities. And so, as you know, 87% of air conditioning and heating purchases, but also refrigerators and water heaters, are made on an emergency basis, right? The appliance fails, and then you say, well, let me buy a new one. And there's been a proliferation of on-the-spot financing offerings where people can get a 5-minute credit review. And the average interest rate on those products is 30%.
Wow.
So, that seems like a problem we can solve. And then the third area of focus is around resiliency, but also this DERMS framework around FERC Order 2222, which is around allowing all these appliances and others to talk with the grid and provide grid services and get paid for them, right? And when I say resiliency, I mean, when you look at Texas, A lot of people with Teslas were able to live in their Teslas in camp mode, right, with 96 kilowatt hours worth of battery backup. They have F-150 trucks that they could actually, run their house on. And when you talk to General Motors with the Bolt, they believe, so a used Bolt today costs $14,000.
Right.
And for $750, you can turn the Bolt into a bi-directional device to be able to actually run your house, right? And so there are a lot of utility companies that are saying, hey, we're offering these big subsidy programs for for battery backup and that kind of thing. The SGIP rebate programs in California come to mind, but others. Why don't we do this on transport, right? Subprime auto loans are a huge problem in this country as well. And many people need reliable transportation to get to work. How about we combine some of these initiatives together to try to figure this out? So that's what I have for you. I don't know that I have anything definitive to say that we're launching, but there is this concept around a virtual power plant that's coming together where municipal utilities, investor-owned utilities, cities like LA 100, right, with their work there, as well as solar installers and financing companies and others are saying, hey, wait a second, there's a way for us to work with the loan programs office and use the loan guarantees that we're offering to help banks provide these services to these communities in ways that actually are valuable to the president's decarbonization goals, as well as meeting some of the Justice 40 requirements, so that we're not doing these communities any favors, right? We're actually empowering them to be part of this broader movement that we have around decarbonizing our grid.
Well, thank you for that. And I think that's actually a really helpful and full answer. So I think my part two would be, for those of us in this audience who are really interested in this work and interested in either figuring out how they can get a loan from DOE or even support the efforts that you have underway. What are the things that they should be thinking about in terms of how they can engage you and engage your office? And, what are the types of projects that you may be interested in if you know at this point? And you may not, I know you've been in the job a long time.
Yeah. So on the big stuff, I think it's fairly self-explanatory, right? You have a $500 million renewable energy project. You ask us for money, we can do 80%, right? Same thing's true for carbon sequestration and storage. The same thing is true for nuclear, right? So I don't know if we have to go into that. On the distributed stuff, I'd say that, look, we generally have a hard time. We by statute can do anything, right? So we can do $10 million loans, $20 million loans, but it does cost us $2 million per loan to process them. So we generally want to work at 100 million, right? I had an interesting conversation with a nonprofit in Massachusetts who works with a lot of colleges and nonprofits and others to negotiate better electricity rates for them under deregulation. And they've now started helping people with energy efficiency and other things. And they were like, oh, Jigar, $100 million is a large amount of money for us. And I said, well, great. I understand that. Why don't you survey your customers and see whether, like, you replacing their fossil fuel boilers with electrified versions of them, or you helping them with, decarbonization by installing geothermal systems instead of natural gas systems, or all these other things that you've been writing in your newsletter that I'm reading right now, but, you haven't really asked us for money for. Why don't you calculate what that is? And they came back to us and they said, actually, Jigar, shockingly, we have $157 million worth of projects already identified.
Wow.
And I was like, I know. We have a lot of stuff to do. So I think people need to raise their ambition. I think a lot of people in your network are actually very well plugged in to their communities. And their communities need stuff. They need, they have 25-year-old equipment. They've been keeping it together with duct tape and baling wire. And you're saying to them, look, there's all this energy efficient work. Alliance to Save Energy has been by far one of the leaders in helping to make sure the standards are improved every year so that we have this better equipment. But people rightfully haven't, saved money every year to pay for that replacement. So their reserve accounts are not full. And so they're trying to make do with what they have, right? Well, now we have this loan programs office that can actually help replace all that equipment. We can fund it to 90% or 80%, depending on the product category, of its useful life. So we can go 18 years, 22 years, 30 years for the loan. Well, that makes them far more affordable. And we can help support those technologies getting plugged into resiliency and FERC Order 2222 frameworks, right? So a lot of what I would say to your constituencies is think a lot bigger, right? Because that's what we're thinking about, right? I mean,
Okay.
Loan Programs Office is trying to be a bridge to bankability for trillion-dollar markets, right? There's no way to decarbonize our entire country by 2050 or the
Right.
electricity grid by 2035 unless we're operating at trillion-dollar scale, right? And so we're trying to operate at billion-dollar scale to then show the way to private sector markets to come in at trillion-dollar scale. And so, like, I think all of the constituents that I've talked to so far who've pitched me on $15 million deals, I've been able to convince that they have the ability to get to $100 million programs.
Wow. So what people should take away is think bigger and continue to be creative, but think bigger about what your impact can be.
Yep.
It's not often that you find someone who says $15 million is actually not a lot of money. I need you to go 10 times higher. So believe I will be thinking a lot bigger when we finish this conversation. So let's see, I think we have some questions. Let's see if we can catch a couple of them here. And let's see. So here's a question for you, Jigar. Are there limitations to what type of recipient can apply for a loan?
There are no limitations, but I would say there are practical challenges, which is that the Office of Management and Budget has approved a credit scoring model for us. And during the era of stimulus, it didn't really matter what the model said because basically you have this calculation around a credit subsidy. And if that credit subsidy was calculated, it didn't matter because the Congress paid for the credit subsidy on behalf of the applicant by giving us allocated dollars, right? Today, those dollars have largely been used up. And so unless the Congress allocates new money to us under this credit subsidy formula, then we really need investment grade borrowers to borrow money from us, right? It's hard for us to have non-investment grade borrowers because the credit subsidy comes in at, let's call it 20%. So the way that works is if you borrow 100 million from us at, let's call it 2% interest, you need to pay a $20 million fee, 20% of 100, to get that 100 million, right? But if you're a creditworthy borrower, that number is like 4 million, like 4%, right? And so when you spread that over the loan, well, then that increases the interest rate from 2% to 3% if you're a creditworthy borrower. If you're not a creditworthy borrower, that increases it from 2% to 7%.
Okay. So whether you're creditworthy or not, it's still a good deal as compared to 8, 9, 10, 12 and higher percentage.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. And so I have another question here, and this is likely our last, which is just saying, what role would the Loan Programs Office play in the demo projects in the infrastructure plan? So the president's rolled out an infrastructure plan, and are these the types of projects that would be a part of that plan, or they go beyond that?
Yeah, so we are separate from the demo projects. We're part of the same continuum, right?
Okay.
So you have R&D, and then you have ARPA-E, and then you have demo projects as sort of this missing middle. This is like ARPA-E scale up, and then demo projects, and then us. So we're not part of the demo project. The demo project is the first project that generally gets funded by a grant. I think most of the demo money is a grant fund. And then once that demonstration has worked, well, then we do the next 10 deployments using, our debt.
Okay. And so I'm going to ask you one last question, Jigar, and it is kind of related to equity. It's related to something that you said in the beginning of your comments, right? Which was to reach low, moderate income communities is more expensive because you're trying to build trust, et cetera, et cetera. And so what advice, we have lots of members as part of our coalition at the Alliance who are really interested and committed in working in these kinds of communities. And what kind of advice would you give them as they kind of pursue that and people don't give up because it's more expensive and it's just a little bit more difficult?
Well, so there's lots of answers to the question, and I wouldn't say that I am an expert at
That's okay.
the question. There are many others who have studied this problem for a long time. I'd say there's a few points of entry, right? So clearly these fintech people have figured out how to get an app in the phone of the contractor so people can apply for this money in 5 minutes at 30% interest, right? We could do the same thing, right? We could put an app on their phone as well. So to me, I think a lot of these entities, whether it's a municipality or a nonprofit or the electric utility company locally or others, can get an app on that phone as well, right? And they certainly have, right? Whether it's companies like Uplight or Energy or others who've done these kinds of things. The second thing I'd say is that we talk to these communities and interact with them, for lots of programs, right? So you have the weatherization assistance program, you have LIHEAP, you have bill assistance programs. There's lots of things that we require these communities to do to apply for some sort of program. So the question becomes, certainly I don't think we should share their data without their permission. But is there a way to ask people at the time at which they're applying for something else to say, would you like to click this box and let me share your information with these other programs so that this effort you've put forward on this application can be used for these other applications, right? And so I think that we just need to think through how we serve these communities to save their time and to increase trust across all of these stakeholders so that we're, treating these communities with the respect and, really, just the way in which we all would like to be treated.
Thank you for that. So with that, we are just at time. So I'm going to say one, thank you. If you haven't heard before, you'll hear it now. The Alliance is here to support you. Our coalition is here to support you. And we are deeply committed to doing this work together. And so any way that can happen, you know how to get in touch with us as we know how to get in touch with you. And I will. I'm going to say to our audience out there, thanks, you guys. I know we started a little bit late, but we are just getting started. We've got a full day ahead. Lots of things to talk about as it relates to active efficiency, transportation, equity, energy efficiency, climate. It's going to be a really great day. Jigar is just the start of our Ask Me Anythings. We're going to get to hear from Congressman Welch, Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester. We're going to end our day with an Ask Me Anything with our board chair, Chris Womack, the president of Georgia Power. So we'll take a quick break, stretch your legs, grab a cup of coffee. We will meet you back here soon in the cloud, 1045. For our 14th EE Global. Jigar, thank you so much for giving us the time, and we look forward to keeping in touch and working with you.
My pleasure. This was wonderful, and just love the work that you and all of your stakeholders and members do.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Bye.